We appreciate the governor coming on board to discuss this now national issue. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, C4.
Look, let me begin with your statement that Mike Ricci, your spokesman, had out yesterday about just where we are with the president's comments. First of all, congratulations on being the chairman of the National Governors Association. Let me get out the way first. Congratulations, Governor.
Thank you very much.
And let me begin with your reflection, your thought. I mean, everybody is all over this nationally talking about this. What are your thoughts, Governor?
Well, I mean, the comments are just outrageous and inappropriate. And the irony is, you talk about the National Governors Association. I had just delivered a nationally televised address on live TV addressing the nation's governors, talking about this exact point, talking about the angry and divisive politics that are literally tearing America apart, that the governors have found a better way to govern and to move forward, but that Washington is just completely consumed with angry and divisive politics, the divisiveness, the dysfunction. And then 14 hours later, we get this tweet that sets off another firestorm of angry tweets back and forth. The president attacking Elijah Cummings in Baltimore in this district, and other people that are going to fire him back. And it's like, I think enough is enough. I mean, people are just completely fed up with this kind of nonsense. And why are we not focused on solving the problems and getting to work instead of who's tweeting what and who's calling who what kind of names? I mean, it's just absurd.
Governor Larry Hogan, this past weekend, Baltimore City, from Friday through last night, saw 6 more homicides. We had more than 15 shootings altogether. We are in a month now of July, Governor Larry Hogan, so the 29th day. We've had 38 murders so far. The tragic 2015 year, Governor, where we saw 344 homicides, we're ahead of that pace right now. So my point in all that is where we are today, we need to focus on real problems.
Well, you are exactly right, C4, and that's what we should be doing. That's what we are doing. I think that's what the city leadership is trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do in Annapolis. But in Washington, I mean, quite frankly, what is the president doing? What is the Congress doing? We're arguing and tweeting back and forth, but why aren't we focused on some of these problems? 3 people murdered, 8 people shot on Saturday. We have a 12-year-old boy in the hospital. Homicides are up. Non-fatal shootings up.
30% up.
It's, we have been doing everything possible, but we sent in 500 additional officers. We made 2,000 arrests. We're pushing for tougher, sentencing for repeat violent offenders. Project Core, we've torn down 4,000 blighted buildings. We've invested $5 billion into the city of Baltimore. I mean, we're doing a lot of things, but we sure could use some help from the White House and from the Congress. And, the past couple of days would have been a lot more productive if we were talking about solutions to problems rather than who tweeted what and who called whom, by what name. And, that's just absurd.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan joins us on board. Governor, does this provide us, like I said, start the show, okay, Trump's a racist. Let's call him every name you want to call him. Let's beat him like a piñata. When that's all said and done, though, does this provide us an opportunity, now you as chairman of the Governors Association, our mayor, to go to the White House and say, look, you called Baltimore all these names, rat infest, whatever. Now, what can we do to correct it? Does this provide us an opportunity?
Well, I think it may, hopefully. I mean, that's a good way to look at it, C4. I'd like to look at the silver lining in every cloud. But, this is at the very core of what I've been talking about, probably more than anyone in America for the past 5 years. It's almost everything I've been focused on is ending this divisiveness and this angry rhetoric, this mean-spirited politics that we have in America. I just addressed it in a national address to the nation's governors on C-SPAN on Friday, just before this happened. I talked about it in my inaugural address, both of them 4 years apart. But we have got to get the people in Washington to stop the angry, divisive politics and and stop the tweeting and get focused on how do we solve the problems, not just of Baltimore, but all of our urban areas. This kind of stuff is just not helpful. We have real problems that need to be addressed. There's no question about that. But we can't do it without Washington to help.
Governor Hogan, you have had 2 mayors now, and even though Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake didn't say it, she kind of alluded to it, but difference between Catherine Pugh and Mayor Jack Young, who said every time they reach out to you and ask for help, you've been there. Having said all of that, we still have a public education system that has 12% of its kids reading proficiently, according to state standards, 17% in math. We have streets collapsing. What I'm saying is we did a Marshall Plan for this city, Governor, that I think this provides us an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, I think it does give us an opportunity to go to Washington and say, let's take all of this frustration and anger and direct it towards fixing the problems of cities like Baltimore. We really do need a huge focus and direction from the federal government. The state and the city can't do it alone. The state taxpayers have invested $5 billion just since I've been governor into the city of Baltimore. We've had record funding for the Baltimore City schools, 5 budgets in a row. We've put money into to fighting crime. We've backed up the city in every aspect, more money into revamping the transit system. We've invested money in all directions. Ever since, as you know, C4, I came in during the riots and kept the city from burning down. We've been focused on trying to fix the long-term problems ever since then. But
the accountability component, Governor, what you've inserted into the current commission bill with an inspector general, I think we need something broader when it comes to once the funds leave Annapolis and get here, how they're spent.
That's exactly right, because, look, we spend so much time talking about how much money are we going to spend and not enough time talking about results and the effectiveness and being more accountable and making sure we get better results, because you can invest all the money you want. If we don't get better results, it's kind of just throwing money out the window.
I had Comptroller Peter Francho on just a moment ago, Governor, and one of the things he talked about in looking at how state police have been provided to the city. I mean, Superintendent Palazzo has been, a press conference to press conference with Commissioner Harris and everybody else. Is there anything we can do to further assist the city with more state police assistance?
Well, we have been, and we will continue to do so. First of all, I'm looking forward to we're setting up a meeting with the mayor and the police commissioner to review and discuss the new crime plan that they've come up with. I'm encouraged that we have a police commissioner and a mayor that seem to be focused on this and that they do have a plan. We're going to work with them to try to implement the plan and to make it better. I called together 26, and here's where we did get some help from the federal government. I called together 26 federal and state law enforcement agencies. We sent in 500 additional law enforcement officers into the city, and we assisted them in arresting 2,000 people, including 260 of the most violent repeat offenders, and we took them off the streets. But unfortunately, many of them were released back onto the streets again.
That's the issue. And see, I go back to the meeting, Governor, and we got the governor for 2 segments, so whatever we don't get in this segment, Governor, we'll go to the next one. But when you called a meeting in the most dangerous year the city's had, 2017, and you got all the partners to show up at your office, right, the Schaefer building, and the judicial community refused to show. That's where the problem is, keeping them locked up, Governor.
Well, and so I also put legislation in last session. I lowered the prison population more than any other state in America for people with, simple possession. We're working on drug treatment and mental health counseling instead of incarceration. But on repeat violent offenders that keep shooting people on the streets of Baltimore, they need to go to jail, and they need to stay in jail. And the legislature voted against it.
Yep.
They refused to pass the bill. So you can arrest people, 10 times or 15 times, but if they keep coming back to the streets, we're going to continue to have 300 murders a year.
Governor, we have had, just in the last week, a mother with a 5-week-old pistol whipped in Federal Hill in downtown Baltimore. We have had a deputy police commissioner and his wife robbed by gunpoint. We have had a 59-year-old chemist, a Muslim chemist, who was walking a block away from our central police district, beaten and stomped by teenagers. All this was young people and teenagers. We have a juvenile problem, Governor, that really needs to be addressed with juveniles.
Well, there's no question about that, and it's out of control. And maybe this is an area where we can go to the feds, and perhaps once all this tweeting stops and all the name calling calms down, maybe we can get Congressman Cummings and his colleagues in Congress and the president and his team over at the White House to focus on what can the federal government do to help us stop these issues in Baltimore City and in Chicago and in Los Angeles and other cities around the country, because we're not the only ones.
No.
You know, it's a terrible problem, and everybody's doing everything they can, but we've got to come up with some better solutions and some better ideas, and we all better get focused on it. It better be an all hands on deck approach, because it's out of control.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is on board. We're talking about the president's tweet. Well, if Mayor Jack Young, who was on CNN this morning, actually saying that was listening, I think he got his answer from you a little earlier, Governor.
Well, I didn't hear his comment until just now, so I wasn't responding to my friend Jack Young. Look. 2 weeks ago, I came out and said the comments earlier about the squad were, unbecoming of a president, outrageous. I immediately responded on this. There's nobody, you can't find a single person, you can't find another Republican governor in America that's been more critical of the president on so many topics. I did come out immediately to defend the city and to say that these remarks were not appropriate. And I'm the one that's been talking about fixing this angry and divisive politics. But again, me jumping in with a tweet to attack the other tweet that was attacking somebody else,
it goes nowhere.
Doesn't help the problem, and that's my whole point of what I've been talking about. Look, what I care about is the city of Baltimore and us fixing the problems. We have, it's the heart of our state. It's the lifeblood of Maryland, and we have some very strong and resilient people who we all care about, and we've got serious problems that need to be addressed. And tweeting or reacting to somebody else's tweet and attacking people back and forth is not really the solution. And that's my point is not going to change. And, you can criticize me all you want. I happen to believe that me focusing on solving problems is better than people focusing on yelling at each other.
Well, Governor Larry Hogan, in that spirit of solving problems, which we have talked about in many instances of what you have brought to the table for Baltimore City, as now the chairman of the National Governors Association, we've seen reductions in crime in other cities and states. Los Angeles, in Chicago, they have a 7% reduction in shootings so far this year, 11% in non-fatal shootings. Can we look at what other states are doing and bring that to Baltimore, Governor?
We can, and we have, and unfortunately we haven't been able to institute all of them. In some cases, it's a lack of assistance from the federal government. In some cases, it's a lack of action by the city government. And in some cases, it's been uncooperation by the state legislature. But I have been driving to try to do all of the things that all of the other cities have had done that are being successful. I'll give you one example. Project Exile, where you arrest people and prosecute them on federal gun crimes. So you can prosecute them with federal prosecutors in federal courts where they get federal mandatory sentences. That would be a way to really get some people off the streets. And we pushed it. We would love to get a lot more funding from the federal government to put more federal prosecutors into Baltimore City to help us clean up the problem. We got a couple. We funded them from the state. We were willing to do even more. And the U.S. Attorney, was good and cooperated with us. But I'd like to put 50 more of them in there and get the federal government to send them in so we can start prosecuting people, because the state legislature wouldn't pass that kind of a bill in Maryland. We can't put them in jail. We can't get them convicted in Baltimore City courts. We can't take them off the streets. So, that's a perfect example. That has happened very effectively in other cities. And Project Exiles, we have it and we're implementing it, and we've strengthened it a little bit, but we should be really doubling down. And that's something that the President and Congressman Cummings should be helping us on.
Governor Larry Hogan, when the first day of legislative session hit this year after your re-election, I had my show in Annapolis, thanks to you, on the second floor of the governor's, when it got right out of the governor's conference room. And the main issue, Republicans, Democrats, yourself, everybody said the violence in Baltimore City is the number one issue. Mike Miller, President of the Senate, said, let's get some money for 500 additional officers. So when this issue comes up with President Trump's tweets, we focus on his tweets, but really, we all have not been rowing in the same direction on this issue in the state, Governor.
Well, it's very true. Look, in the legislature, I was trying to push tough gun laws, tough sentencing for people who commit crimes with a gun. Legislature didn't like that. Their focus, and their number one focus, was plastic 3D guns, which not a single person has ever committed a crime with in the history of the state of Maryland. Yet we have more than 300 murders every year with real people shooting people with real guns. And that was the difference. We can't get people on board in the same direction. I also pushed legislation to try to hold the judges more accountable for their decisions of letting repeat violent offenders who've been convicted 3 times out on the streets, or somebody that just shot somebody for the 3rd time getting 90 days suspended sentence instead of 10 years in jail. They didn't even want to hold them accountable.
Well, Governor, now that, like I say, I'll call Trump every name in the book. He's horrible. What he said is wrong. But now that we've all kind of exercised those demons, can we make the next 6 months in this city a more livable situation? Because right now, Governor, every day it's a nightmare story coming out.
I agree with you, C4. And as terrible as the comments were, as you say, maybe it's going to help us steer the conversation away from the angry rants back and forth and focus in on, yes, we have real problems in Baltimore, and guess what? The state and the city need the help of the Congress and the White House. And so I say let's stop the tweeting and let's get to work in Washington on getting things done as we're trying to do here in the state and the city.
Finally, Governor, when the mayor and the commissioner present this plan, which I think is a good one, by the way, it's a short-term plan and a 5-year plan, which I really like. If you get one is 20 pages, or it's 26. Would you please do something public and let us know how we're all working together? Because I really believe this can make a difference, Governor.
Absolutely, I believe so too, C4, and I can promise you that we're going to get on board and continue to back up the city as much as we possibly can at the state level, and we need the feds to help us too.
Once again, Mr. Chairman, National Governors Association, congratulations on that, and we'll be seeing you soon, Governor.
All right, thank you, C4.